You're listening to Experience Imagination, a themed entertainment design podcast presented by Falcon's Creative Group. Every episode, we discuss a new topic with a panel of creative professionals. Hi, I'm Cecil McPurry, President and Chief Creative Officer of Falcons.
Welcome to another episode of Experience Imagination. I'm your moderator, Audrey DeLong. Today, we're going to discuss water park design with a few experts in the field. We started talking about this topic when WhiteWater contacted us about doing an episode with them. The Falcons team got together to discuss the direction, and when you're talking about water park design, there really is a lot to cover. Isn't that right, Cecil?
That's correct. It's an exciting medium. And as a consumer, it's nice to be able to have different offerings. You have the dry parks, which, have been heavy in storytelling, but the water park, it's a unique offering.
Mm-hmm. We had a big part in bringing a water park to life pretty recently.
That's right. We worked on an amazing project in Hainan Island, and at the time was the largest water park in Asia. And so we had been involved with different master plans in the sense of existing water parks needing facelift, reinventing themselves, and then we landed the large Atlantis resort experience. And nowadays, and I think one of the reasons we're heavily involved in that realm now is because the storytelling component, right? That adds this other layer that consumers are looking for to expand their guest experience. And those are successful because of the immersion of story.
Well, we have a lot of great conversations coming up on this episode. Thank you for setting it up, Cecil, but we definitely want to circle back with you at the end to get your final thoughts.
That sounds good. Thank you.
All right. We have Emily Colombo here from WhiteWater. She is the Vice President of Strategic Partnerships. Hey, Emily, how are you?
Hey, thanks for having me.
Excellent. Glad you can join. We also have Kevin White and Joe Schaefer here from the Falcons Treehouse side. I'll let them introduce themselves. Hey, guys.
Yeah, I'm Joe Schaefer. I'm the Technical Design Manager here at Falcons.
And I'm Kevin White, and I'm a Technical Integration Designer here at Falcons.
Well, we brought you all together today to talk water park design. Emily, could you give our listeners an idea of what your job entails?
It's no secret that the strength of our industry lies in working together. Like, we are a big industry, but very small at the same time. So I work with companies like Falcon's Treehouse to create guest experiences and immersive experiences and really push the boundaries on what our industry is doing. So that's kind of where I come in. I serve as the liaison to the partners and friends in the industry who are making the magic happen.
Well, that sounds like a fun job.
Yeah.
Kevin, after Falcons wins the business to design a water park, what's the very first step?
I think the first thing that we have to do with any new client is really strategize with them to figure out what their end goal is. Sometimes they come in and they know the overall theme that they're going for, they know their target demographic, or even, an attendance figure that they have to hit. Some cases, they have all the answers, but I think us as designers, we don't mind if they don't have the answers because it gives us the freedom to collaborate with them to basically come up with a blue sky concept. From there, we can kind of start developing storylines and individual attractions. We're basically kind of ideating what we want the guest experience on the individual attractions to be. So, if it's a thrill water park, like, do we want them to be scared? Do we want them to be relaxed? Do we want them to be awestruck? Using these filters, we can establish an attraction mix that then accomplishes what we believe is the best overall park experience.
Yeah, I think those filters are really driven by one of the things you said previously, between age and demographics. That's one of the main filters we use to kind of determine what our audience is and how to design to that audience. If you have a demographic or an age group that's trending younger, we probably shouldn't have a ton of thrill rides. It vastly alters the ride mix we have to select. Again, that's where Emily starts to come in and can tell us what makes sense and what doesn't.
It's a very good point. I mean, a lot of our clients are unexperienced developers that are building a giant RD&E and housing communities, and they want to add an amenity, and they don't know about water park. So it's really nice when we do have somebody like Falcons that has worked with the client to understand where they want to go with this park and what they want to do to make themselves stand out in the marketplace. And then we have clients that come to us and say, I want a water slide that's 286 feet long and 32 feet tall, and that's a very different subset.
So we've talked about the attraction mix a little bit, but I'm wondering, Joe, maybe I'll throw this question to you, is when you're thinking about the overall guest experience, what are some of the top considerations?
I think we really strive for a level of immersion and a cohesive storyline that makes sense. One of the major discussion points we have with a client on the front end is, what story are we trying to tell? And then that plays back into demographics and age groups. When we define what the story is, we can develop a program that makes sense with that story, and then a thematic overlay that makes sense with that program. And I think that's where a key point of coordination is between companies like FTH and WhiteWater, is the marriage of a thematic overlay with the attractions.
Yeah, you mentioned story, and a lot of people that are listening are like, what story? I'm going to a water park. I'm slipping down slides. I mean, where's the story?
I think more and more the marketplace is growing, and the reflection of that is that more and more guests are wanting an entire experience rather than just a single ride or a single attraction that they kind of get off of and then on to the next thing. And it's the marriage of these experiences as a whole that creates a memorable experience that drives people to want to come back, to have that again, and bring family members with them that maybe have not experienced that same thing.
From my end, I mean, that's the thematic approach, but operationally, I think we just want consistency. We want rides that are operating the same way every single day. And there's nothing worse than, the slide's down for the day or stuff like that. So, and that's another huge advantage of WhiteWater, is that they have such a track record in the industry that we know that their slides are going to operate at a high level for a long time.
Obviously, today's audiences are looking for something different. I think technology plays a role in that. I wanted to ask Emily, from her perspective working at WhiteWater all these years, how does technology play into your role?
The guest experience is becoming more competitive, more demanding. Even in the municipal side of the business, those parks are getting bigger, and they are beginning to have theme, and they're beginning to start to compete with the larger parks. So things like wait time, immersive experiences within the queue line versus the kind of classic switchback ropes that used to be the case. These are all things that are becoming really important. We have our Vantage system, which is like an RFID wristband that's allowing people to experience the park differently. So, you can sign up for Vantage, you get the app, and you choose your favorite music, your favorite color, your favorite lighting package. And, when you're going down a slide, if you love Katy Perry and the color pink, then that's what comes on when you're experiencing one of our attractions. And the other thing that we see is the theme park and the water park space is just blending so much. We see a lot more theme park style rides, and then like the integration of theming is just becoming so much more important. That's another big point that we work on together, is like the queue lines. That's something that when we're working on a ride package, we're designing it and kind of negotiating back and forth, saying, if we move this over here, when we have our bridge to get to the tower, could you see the guests enjoying the ride from this vantage point? And that's something that we can model up in 3D together and ensure that we're really getting the most out of the queuing experience, because that's something that the water park really hasn't capitalized on as much as the theme park has.
No, I think that's a great point. I mean, historically, and I think about the parks that I've been to or the ones that I went to growing up, there's a lot of concrete and there's a lot of fiberglass. I feel like it's becoming more and more expected that there's going to be these really nice thematic overlays and, taking advantage of the natural landscape. More so than what we've seen in the past. So I totally agree that, it's kind of blending more into a theme park experience in terms of the actual architecture and cladding on the slides.
Yeah, people don't necessarily think of a theme in a queue line at a water park. But there's more to do in the queue line now. So I wanted to see if Joe or Kevin can dive into what we've done for a queue line recently, just to give the listeners an idea.
One of the things Emily brought up is a key point, that RFID is starting to permeate the marketplace as a whole.
And RFID is radio frequency identification.
That's correct. The addition of RFID also opens opportunities for small inline interactives, little touch points, things that you find that make you feel like you're exploring a space and that the space is more alive, even if it's just like a queue line in a jungle theme. There's hidden elements here and there. The idea of adding overarching stories or overarching quests that maybe are, again, drawn into an interactive experience, that you might find something in the queue that the other people are just walking right by, but is meaningful to you because you're a part of this overarching story. And you've taken it upon yourself to explore more, to hunt for these things that might be hidden throughout.
We just want the guests to have something visually stimulating to really kind of surround themselves with while they're waiting in the queue. I mean, it doesn't always have to be these big interactives or anything like that. Sometimes something as simple as just, patterning on the woodwork or, patterning on the slides using the aqualucents that WhiteWater produces. All of those things just gives the guests something to look at so that they're not solely focused on, I have, 20 more people in front of me.
Emily, you were WhiteWater's lead water slide designer for more than 7 years. Is that correct?
I was.
Can you give us an idea of the process of designing new attractions?
One of the best things about our industry as a whole and WhiteWater is just how diverse it is. I mean, we've done projects in almost every corner of the globe. And we do everything from a water slide at a Holiday Inn that somebody will ride 30 times in a row and see if they can beat their time to a 250-foot tall vertical water park in Qatar. So the process is obviously really different for each client. If we're working with Falcons, typically we've got a lot of information and we're kind of working towards more of a themed attraction that we can work on together. If it's a park expansion, it starts with, what do they have? What are they lacking? What are they competing with? And how do we make them stand out? If it's a new greenfield water park, a lot of the times it's what is the icon for that park? What is the big giant ride that's going to be on all of the billboards, is going to be the first, picture on their homepage. And we kind of start there and then add attractions to backfill the rest of the park. One of the cool ones is if it's a cruise ship, it's mostly like how much weight we have available in which area. They give us point loads that they can accept, and we have to design attractions around that. We're talking about space for water and how much loading we can put on the stern side of the ship. So if I'm going to be honest, it's mostly just starts with a CAD file.
There's a lot of things to consider when you're designing a world-class attraction. The fun factor is just one of those things. What else goes into the process?
Our head of waterslide engineering always says that it's very easy to design a fun ride that's not safe and very hard to design a safe ride that's fun. So water slides don't have lap bars. They don't have a set path. They don't have a set weight combination. We could have 2 young kids on the ride or 6 football players. There's so much variability when it comes to designing water slides. So it's the most important part of our company. It's the most important part of all of our jobs, is ensuring that the rides we make are safe. And so we've been developing a simulation software for over a decade, which is, it looks into raft placement, G-forces, jerk within the ride, velocities for like thousands of conditions of rider placement and weight distribution and water volumes within the slide. And we're constantly validating it, constantly using drone technology to go and ensure that the actual path and the predicted path are aligned, and then fine-tuning the software from there to make sure that we're keeping all of our guests safe.
Yeah, I mean, I'll be honest, as a consumer, the water slides scare me more than any of the theme park
Definitely.
rides. Yeah. The trapdoor slides always get the heart going.
Terrifying.
They always get the heart going, yeah.
They're amazing.
I have to force myself to do them.
I have to trust Emily that she's making these things safe.
But there's still terror in your heart.
There's definitely terror going on the trapdoor slides.
So, Emily, Kevin was talking about the fact that water parks are concrete and fiberglass. There's probably a customization element, much like you would customize a ride vehicle. How do you do that with slides?
I am a huge proponent of what you can do with color, with veiling, which is applying patterns and theming to the outside of the fiberglass. The aqualucent technology is just fantastic. We use just translucent patches within the fiberglass in custom patterns to allow light to come in. So working with Falcons, we've come up with patterns together that they would suggest something or give us some inspiration, and we'll come back with a manufacturable solution. And they'll say, actually, we want to add a little bit more color to this side, or we'd like to simplify this pattern, and we can actually model it into 3D to show what it will look like for the guest. And we've done a lot of that over the last couple of years, but I see that being a huge thing for rides going forward.
Well, Emily, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks for having me.
Joe and Kevin, thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
More than happy to be here.
Well, now we have Ron Lausman here. He's with WhiteWater. Hey, Ron.
Good morning.
And we also have Evan Barnett, who is with Typhoon Texas.
Good morning. Thanks for being here and being on the show.
Well, we're happy to have you. And before we get too far into the conversation, Evan, you are the president and general manager. So, in your role, what do you do on a daily basis?
I currently have the honor of being the two roles, the president of Typhoon Texas and also the on-the-ground general manager at the Houston location. And where I always like to say that my main role is to redefine the water park experience. And in order to do that, you have to spend a lot of times on the ground level with the teams that are actually doing the heavy lifting with the guests. And so I spend a lot of my time just communicating what that vision and culture is, and so it'll stick, right? We're there and we're excited about it.
That's totally understandable, for sure. Ron, tell us about your role at WhiteWater and how you interact with Falcons.
I work a lot with special projects and a lot of the overall master planning and design of parks, and whether we're doing it on our side of the fence or we're working with design houses around the world. My role is to kind of work with different teams and bridge that skill set to really take a project and make a better project out of it.
So I'm wondering, there's probably some special ingredients that you bring to the table, but WhiteWater as a company does as well. I mean, let's face it, you guys aren't the only game in town, but you're one of the larger games in town. So I wanted to ask about sort of the things that WhiteWater brings that maybe your competitors don't.
Size certainly has its advantages. I mean, we are kind of the biggest water park company globally, and with that, we have quite a bit of resources at our fingertips. We have engineers that are dedicated strictly to new product development, evaluation, and testing. And we have a proprietary software system that's been developed in our company over multiple years. So when we develop rides and attractions, we actually simulate those rides, so we know that there's predictable results. And that sort of ability, combined with our design, manufacturing, and installation teams, provides a pretty enormous force of knowledge and ability that it's kind of hard to compare to.
Evan, there are 2 Typhoon Texas locations. There's one in the Houston area and one in the Austin area. Is that correct?
That is correct. Yeah, we're one park, 2 locations, and similar kind of look and feel when you're actually in the park.
So if I'm a visitor and I'm going to the park for the first time, what can I expect?
When you're at our facilities, what you're really looking at is you came for a water park, but you leave with an experience, and you can't really necessarily put your finger on what that one thing is. But when you leave, you know there was something special there. And that's kind of I would say our kind of mantra. We have anywhere from attractions for the younger all the way up to the parents, and even so much the grandparents sitting at the wave pool enjoying that. So we really wanted to look at our parks through many different lenses and not just one lens. And our attraction mix through WhiteWater has really been able to provide that. So we're really proud of our attraction mix and what we're trying to provide with our communities.
Ron, when you're working with an operator like Typhoon Texas and they hire you to build out their park, tell us what that process entails.
This particular park, Typhoon Texas, their Katy one was actually a bit unique. I was involved in one of the early meetings, and literally I spent a few hours overnight before the meeting and took the overall layout of the park and made some adjustments to it. And there's kind of some trepidation coming into the meeting because we're talking about the overall attraction mix and trying to provide sort of the best content of the park. At that juncture, I spent a little bit of time rolling out this new version of the plan and suggested that they make some of the changes and kind of left that plan with them. And after leaving the meeting, there was some further discussions, and a lot of these things that I had suggested were implemented. I think from being there at the right time created a better experience for the overall park, and adding in the rides and attractions mix that we all vetted and created a better park venue, created all of the energy and attractions and fun that we needed to, but it also made the park layout better and removed some of the issues that were inherent in the original design. So it was quite a unique experience in this regard.
Well, Evan, did you have anything to add to that?
For us, it was a good park. It just wasn't a great park. And I think how Ron came in and WhiteWater partnered with us, I would say the secret sauce to that was that wisdom and just being a little bit removed from the project, from the auspice of the original design. That wisdom that Ron brought really took this park from good to great. And even now, watching the guests interact with it, if we would have done it the way it was originally planned, there were some pinch points and just unintended consequences that we didn't think through. So We were super excited to have that, and certainly a blessing that he was on our project.
I should mention that Falcon's creative group did not master plan Typhoon Texas. We work with WhiteWater on other projects, but it's not just, okay, let's plug in some slides here and there and see what happens. There's a lot of collaborative thinking that goes into it and a lot of strategic planning. So I wanted to emphasize that Falcons does implement master plans, and we work with our collaborators like WhiteWater and the operators as well to come up with that attraction mix.
We work with design houses all over the world, and certainly Falcons has done some very amazing design work on some of the projects that are happening right now. If we can understand what your vision is, understand what you want to create, the aha moment for us will be, okay, well, what if you did this, or what if you did this differently, move something over here, taking our palette of rides and attractions and integrating them within that framework of the design to create a much better experience out of it.
Ron, what are some of the innovations that WhiteWater has been working on in regards to sustainability and reducing their use of natural resources?
We're adapting technologies to save water, and it reduces the amount of energy consumed within driving our rides. We also have adapted a lot in the manufacturing to reduce the amount of product that goes into producing slides. And we're always innovating and improving on that all the time.
Yeah, I'd imagine that conserving water is at the top of the list for everybody these days.
Huge.
I wanted to turn to Evan now and ask, can you tell us about some of the technology that you incorporated into Typhoon Texas?
Well, what we wanted, we understood that people use technology as convenience. And in a lot of ways, we were one of the early adopters of cashless payments. People are wet, right? And they have to hold wallets, and you have to use your lockers. And how do we make that just a little bit more convenient for them? So what we did is when we built the park, was built this awesome infrastructure with technology. And so now we're able to kind of test new applications really easily. And instead of having to redo our entire network per se, if we want to test some new kind of technology for our guests. And that's really helped us kind of on a move forward basis. So we look at it as certainly a way to enhance our experience as people move through our park, for sure.
Yeah, this kind of leads me into another question, if you wouldn't mind taking a swing at it, both Ron and Evan here. But we'll start with Evan. Do you ever conduct research by visiting other parks to check out what they're offering?
So I have 3 kids, and they're all in elementary. And so when I say, hey, I'm going to the water park to go do some research, they just look at me in awe, like, what? You're going to work?
Yeah.
But it's something
field trip.
Field trip. It's something we do quite a bit, and what I've kind of learned to do is not just go to our industry attractions, but also try to go outside of that and just experience just everyday life. Because there's so many different times that movie theaters or bowling alleys or even drive-throughs at fast food restaurants that are using new approaches to certain things that you can apply to our operation. And I just kind of always just have an open mind and just look at things from a different perspective. But that market research and trending and being humble and knowing that we don't have it all figured out is a certain fun aspect of this job, for sure.
Oh, I would imagine so. I know. I mean, Ron, there's a lot of places you can go to see technology. There's trade shows, and of course, reading about them online. I'm sure you're keeping up with all the latest digests and news, but there's nothing quite like going to the park to experience it. So
that's a fact.
Tell us about 1 or 2 recent visits. You don't have to name the park.
Every chance that we get, we visit parks, and even in the vein of our trade shows, we often get together our whole team of people at the trade show, our sales team, and go visit an attraction together and do a walkthrough on it, ride all the rides, but then do sort of a critical analysis of the park, what things are successful, what are not successful, and how you can potentially change or modify things. And again, it's about making a better mousetrap and improving upon the situation and how we do it differently next time.
Well, moving on to Evan here again. If you wanted to add an attraction to one of your parks, what does that process look like?
Recently, it seems like both our locations, we've kind of gone through this process. And the court of public opinion definitely they have an opinion, right, on what you should put in the park. Mm-hmm. And so we do look at that for sure. We took time to ask our team members. They're interacting with our guests all the time. And then once we kind of go through those aspects, we kind of do an internal SWOT analysis. Just well, what are our strengths? What are our weaknesses? What are some opportunities and our threats as an organization that we need to kind of button up? What the customers have told us what they really want is an attraction that provides more activity to lessen the lines necessarily in the park, but also to capitalize on our guest that's just under that 48 inches that can't necessarily enjoy all the big attractions at the park. So we don't have enough of that. And so what we came back to the drawing board was it's not necessarily the biggest, most awesome drop, ride that we're going to do. We needed to provide something that the customers are in need of, and that's servicing a segment of our guests, as well as providing more activities to reduce the stress on all of our other attractions.
Absolutely. Ron, can you tell us about any kind of special attractions that might be in the mix for release anytime soon, or are you going to keep those under wraps?
Well, we kind of have to keep those under wraps. There's lots of stuff on the drawing boards right now, and we have certainly created some interesting projects that are under construction right now. A big one in Qatar, where we've got a massive vertical water park under construction, which is essentially a 120-foot high oil derrick. Basically, it's a building, but it's themed as an oil derrick, and it's literally a vertical water park. But we've got some really interesting new stuff on the boards that is soon to be released.
Well, I, as a water park fan, cannot wait. Okay, well, I wanted to thank Ron from WhiteWater and Evan from Typhoon Texas. Thank you so much, guys.
Our pleasure.
Thank you for having us.
We're back with Cecil now, and wow. Those conversations revealed a lot about the process. Our guests gave us so much to unpack. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, it's really interesting to see the depth of what it takes to do what we do. Mm-hmm. And the operational side of it too as well. You learn a lot about, once it's open, all the idiosyncrasies and processes that it entails to do a water park.
It feels like the process of designing a theme park and a water park, they're pretty identical.
Yeah, I think the process of methodology we go through seems to have some consistency in both mediums, for sure.
Well, great. Well, thank you for putting a button on this episode. We really enjoyed it.
I enjoyed it as well. It was a really good conversation.
Perfect. Well, we want to thank all of our guests, Emily Colombo and Ron Lausman from WhiteWater, Evan Barnett from Typhoon Texas, and our very own Kevin White and Joe Schaefer. And thank you to all of our listeners. We hope you'll join us next time.
Thank you for listening to Experience Imagination, a Falcons Creative Group production. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe to the podcast and share with your friends. To keep up with our latest news, visit us on the web at falconscreativegroup.com and follow us on LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. If you have any questions, comments, or ideas for future episodes, please email us at podcast@falconscreativegroup.com.